All right, so once you get your seat and plastics and everything off, I had a little hour meter on here that I had to pull off, but we're going to work on getting this Airbox kind of unattached so we can get it out. So first thing is we're going to take this little hose on our left-hand side and remove it. And then at the front of the air tank, we have this little collar that's holding us onto the engine. So we're just going to loosen that up. On the back side, we have 3 bolts that are keeping the Airbox in place. One is on the right side of the bike, and the other 2 are in the electrical box behind some wires. We'll want to remove our little mud flap down at the bottom. It's just going to make things a little bit easier later on. And then I found you don't have to, but it's easier to loosen up these bolts on your gas tank just to give your hand a little bit of extra space down here as we remove where that collar was and our Airbox was attached to the engine. Also want to remove this side panel from the Airbox as it won't slide out with that attached. The other option would be to remove the muffler, so this was just a lot easier. Once all that's done, you can slide the Airbox out of the back. And once it's all cleaned up, here's what we got. We're going to remove that little metal screen on the inside. Just loosen up these bolts on the outside. Now with all those removed, you can just press down on the bolt heads, and that silver piece should come right out. It's attached with some like glue, but it should pull out fine. I thought I was recording, but apparently I was not. We're just going to take the little brackets down on the bottom left-hand side here, put it inside the Airbox, match up the holes, and then with the bolts and nuts provided, tighten it up, and that is going to replace that little silver screen that we pulled out. All right, from here we're going to take our little template and drill out pilot holes for the screws. That'll also let us know when we need to cut, kind of where we need to cut, and how big that box can be. There's already kind of an outline on the Airbox, and so just cut along the outside line. If you cut to the inside line, there's harder plastic that's deeper inside of the outermost line, and you'll have a much tougher time cutting through that. It still takes a lot of time to cut through the plastic with the X-Acto blade like they recommend. So after about 10-15 cuts, and I realized that this was going to take me a couple of hours to do, I decided the easiest thing to do actually was to heat up my X-Acto blade, get it nice and red hot, and then it'll plunge through the plastic no problem. As it cools off, it'll stop cutting, pull it out, reheat it up, and then since we did have to melt some of that plastic, I went back through and just cleaned up the outside of that box. Go ahead and put all your screws in, screw it tight, and from there we can put the vent, snap it on with the open space facing forward. Go ahead and reattach our L hose. And then from here, we're going to pull our foam filter off of its cage, spray it with some filter oil like you normally would, throw it in a plastic baggie, massage that oil in. And once you're done with that, throw the filter back on the cage and install it in the Airbox. You're going to want to make sure that when you do put it back on the cage, there's 2 holes on the foam filter that should line up with 2 posts on the cage. From that silver screen that we had taken out earlier, you'll want to just remove this little metal triangle. It goes back onto the Airbox. And then those 2 posts on the cage line up to 2 holes in the Airbox. So once you clamp it down, you should feel those 2 posts kind of fit in snug or snap in. From here, we're just buttoning everything up again, put the Airbox in the way that it came out, back through the back tire. Put our side cover right back on. And then make sure the front of the airbox seats nice onto your engine. And go ahead and tighten that collar back up with the spacer in the middle of the screw. It should go all the way tight so that spacer touches both sides of the collar. Go ahead and bolt your airbox back down, and we'll want to reattach that hose to the front of our airbox. Tighten back up our gas tank, and this was a relatively easy install. It took a little bit to figure out what the easiest way to get the airbox out was, but once it was out and I heated up that X-Acto blade, it was probably a 15-minute install.